The settlement check sat on Alex's kitchen table, its six-figure sum still seeming surreal. Beside it lay the morning newspaper, Victoria Chambers' booking photo prominently displayed on the front page above the headline. Former HOA president faces multiple felony charges in property scheme. Alex poured coffee for Mrs. Finch, who was admiring her new property boundary markers, decorative stone pillars installed as part of the settlement, each engraved with protected historic property, and the date her husband's family had acquired the land. "I never thought I'd live to see justice like this," she said, stirring honey into her cup. Henry would have loved watching those surveyors put in the permanent easement markers. A car pulled into the driveway, Catherine Lynn stepping out with a folder tucked under her arm. As the newly elected HOA president, she had become the face of reform for Oakwood Estates. "The transition is going well," she reported, accepting a coffee. "We've implemented all the transparency measures Rebecca suggested. Board meetings are recorded and live-streamed. All votes are documented with roll call, and our new bylaws explicitly prohibit any action beyond our actual boundaries." She smiled. "Several homeowners have asked if they can join your weekend farmers market." Alex had started the small market as a community healing gesture, inviting neighbors from both inside and outside Oakwood Estates to sell produce and crafts on a corner of his property. What began as reconciliation had blossomed into a popular weekend tradition. His phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca Chen. "Commissioner Wright just resigned. Plea deal in progress. You made the difference." The legal aftermath had been swift and far-reaching. After Victoria's arrest for water service tampering and evidence obstruction, the investigation expanded to include Commissioner Wright and two other county officials. Frank Prescott had turned state's evidence, revealing a pattern of similar schemes dating back years. "The report is here," Mrs. Finch announced, spotting Sonia Washington's news van pulling up. The Channel 7 investigative journalist had turned Alex's story into a 6-part special report that had prompted state legislation on HOA oversight. Today's interview would focus on the Reeves Act, now advancing through the state legislature with bipartisan support. As they walked to meet her, Catherine mentioned casually, "The new commercial zoning passed, by the way. The board unanimously approved the plans." Alex raised an eyebrow. "Commercial zoning?" Catherine grinned. "For your farmers market. It's now officially recognized as a community partnership enterprise. The HOA is contributing to upgraded facilities, if that's acceptable to you." From fighting bitter enemies to forging unexpected alliances, the journey had transformed not just Alex's relationship with Oakwood Estates, but the entire community's understanding of property rights and governance. Later that evening, as sunset painted his cedar shed in golden light, Alex sat on his porch with a legal document Rebecca had helped him create, a conservation trust ensuring his 5 acres would remain undeveloped for generations to come. His grandfather would have approved. In the distance, he could see new residents moving into Oakwood Estates. Their moving truck passed a freshly installed sign at the subdivision entrance that hadn't been there before. "Good neighbors respect boundaries." Alex smiled. Some lessons were worth learning the hard way, especially when those who needed the education most finally got it. Alex stood in his kitchen, staring at the faucet that produced nothing but a dry wheeze. After 3 calls to the water utility, he'd gotten nowhere, each representative more confused than the last about why his service had been disconnected, despite his account showing full payment. The final customer service agent had whispered, "Sir, I shouldn't say this, but the disconnection order came from management, flagged as municipal compliance issue. I've never seen that code before." Outside, the violation stickers plastered across his property created a garish orange trail leading from his driveway to his back porch. He tried removing one, only to discover they were made with some industrial adhesive that took paint off with them. His once peaceful home now looked like it had been vandalized by a particularly methodical street gang. His cell phone rang, a number he didn't recognize. "Mr. Reeves? This is Catherine Lynn from the Oakwood Estates Board." Her voice was hushed as if she feared being overheard. "Thomas Whitaker suggested I call you. I think we need to talk, but not over the phone." Can you meet me at the library in half an hour? Reference section. The county library was quiet on a Tuesday afternoon. Catherine Lynn was younger than Alex had expected, perhaps in her early 30s, dressed in a conservative pantsuit that couldn't hide her nervous energy. She led him to a secluded corner between tall shelves of encyclopedias. I joined the board 6 months ago to advocate for more green spaces, she explained, removing a tablet from her bag. Last week, I accidentally received an email meant for Victoria. I think someone in administrative support mistyped the address. She turned the tablet toward Alex. On screen was an email from someone named J. Martinez at the County Water Authority, with Victoria and Frank copied. Issue resolved as requested. Service terminated with no electronic record. Usual fee applies. There's more, Catherine continued, swiping to show a board document Alex had never seen. This resolution, supposedly passed unanimously, authorizes all necessary measures to ensure community standards compliance from adjacent properties. I never voted on this. I checked with 2 other board members. They never saw it either. Alex's phone buzzed with a text from Mrs. Finch. Men in my garden again. Called sheriff. Nobody came. As if on cue, Catherine's phone lit up with a notification. It's from our HOA messaging system, she said, frowning. Emergency board meeting tomorrow morning. Only agenda item is, her face paled, approval of eminent domain proceedings in partnership with County Development Authority. Alex felt the floor shift beneath him. They can't do that. They're not a government entity. Alone, no, Catherine agreed, her expression grim. But with complicit county officials, they're trying to use a legal loophole meant for public works projects. Walking to his truck afterward, Alex spotted Frank Prescott leaning against the library wall, watching him with undisguised contempt. No pretense of coincidence, no attempt to hide, just open intimidation. That night, Alex woke to the sound of breaking glass. Grabbing his flashlight, he cautiously made his way downstairs to find a brick on his kitchen floor, surrounded by shattered window fragments. Wrapped around it was a printout of the county's eminent domain statute, with a handwritten note. Market value is generous considering your violations. Take it before we take everything. Standing in his darkened kitchen, glass crunching beneath his slippers, Alex made a decision. Tomorrow, he would find a lawyer. This wasn't just about his property anymore. It was about justice. Rebecca Chen's law office was nothing like Alex had imagined. Instead of mahogany and leather, her workspace was modern and utilitarian. Walls covered with whiteboards filled with case notes and strategy maps. Within 24 hours of their initial meeting, she had transformed a conference room into what she called the war room, dedicated entirely to Alex's case. We've got something, said Chen's investigator, Manny Rodriguez, as he entered with a thick folder. A former detective with 20 years on the force, Rodriguez had connections throughout the county. Frank Prescott's security company was incorporated 9 months ago. Before that, he worked for a collections agency that was shut down for illegal intimidation tactics. 2 of his employees have records, one for fraud, one for aggravated assault. Chen added these details to a growing flowchart on the wall, connecting red strings between names and entities. Perfect. And the water department. That's where it gets interesting, Rodriguez replied, tapping a document. You're J. Martinez from the Water Authority email. He's the brother-in-law of County Commissioner Wright, who sits on the Planning and Development Committee. Alex stared at the expanding web of connections. This goes beyond just the HOA, doesn't it? Follow the money, Chen said, handing him a property assessment report. According to this, if that shopping complex gets built, the surrounding Oakwood Estates properties would increase in value by an estimated 30%. The board members all own homes there. They stand to profit personally while claiming they're just protecting community standards. The digital forensics expert, a young woman named Priya, called them to her laptop. I've been analyzing the flash drive Mr. Whitaker provided. There's something odd. Several documents have metadata linking them to county government servers. And look at this email chain. On screen was a conversation between Victoria and someone using a private email address. discussing guaranteed expedited approvals and bypassing environmental impact studies for the commercial development. The private email belongs to Commissioner Wright, prior confirmed. I matched it to messages in other threads. Chen's eyes narrowed. This isn't just HOA overreach, it's public corruption. A knock at the door interrupted them. Chen's assistant entered with an overnight package that had just been delivered. Inside was a USB drive with a note from Catherine Lin. Security footage from last 3 HOA meetings. The real versions, not the edited minutes they publish. Thought you should see this before tomorrow's emergency meeting. Be careful. They gathered around Priya's laptop as she opened the files. The footage showed Victoria clearly stating, "The holder properties are the final hurdle. Once we have those, our investors are ready to break ground immediately." In another clip, she instructed Frank Prescott to increase pressure and make them understand resistance is more expensive than compliance. Most damning was the footage from just 2 days ago, Victoria meeting privately with Commissioner Wright in the HOA office, reviewing maps of Alex's property and discussing contingencies if the eminent domain approach fails. As the video ended, Chen turned to Alex with a smile that reminded him of a predator sighting vulnerable prey. "They've given us everything we need. Now, we prepare the trap." That evening, Chen filed emergency motions with 3 different courts simultaneously. By morning, Victoria Chambers would discover she had severely underestimated her opponent. As the 2 men strode back to their black SUV parked at the edge of his property, Alex's mind raced. His grandfather's warnings about developers eyeing their land suddenly didn't seem so paranoid. He examined the citation more carefully, noting the elaborate Oakwood Estates letterhead and official-looking stamp. The violation listed was for non-conforming structures visible from community property, with a subsection reference to some regulation he'd never agreed to follow. "This is ridiculous," Alex muttered, pulling out his phone to photograph the citation. He'd built that shed with his own hands using timber from his own land. The cedar had been seasoned for 2 years in his workshop, and he'd even incorporated vintage windows from his grandfather's original farmhouse. It wasn't just a storage space, it was a family legacy. From his vantage point, Alex could see the edge of Oakwood Estates through the tree line that marked his eastern boundary. The development had appeared 3 years ago, transforming what was once Henderson's dairy farm into a maze of identical 2-story homes with perfectly aligned mailboxes and regulated lawn heights. He'd watched with mixed feelings as the rural character of the area gradually disappeared, but had always been grateful for the buffer zone of trees he deliberately maintained. Inside his kitchen, Alex spread out his property documents on the weathered oak table that had hosted Reeves' family dinners for 4 decades. He knew every inch of his boundaries. The survey had been updated when his grandfather transferred the deed to him 8 years ago. There was absolutely no legal connection between his land and Oakwood Estates. His phone rang, displaying Mrs. Finch's number. The 78-year-old widow lived on the adjacent property to the north, her 3 acres another holdout against the encroaching development. "Alex, dear, did those men in uniforms visit you too?" Her voice trembled slightly. "They told me my chicken coop violates some ordinance and needs to be removed by next week. I've had those hens for 12 years. They came here about my shed," Alex confirmed, a knot forming in his stomach. "Did they give you a citation?" "Yes, $350. I'm on a fixed income. I can't afford that." Alex felt his face flush with anger. "Don't pay it, Mrs. Finch. Something's not right here. Those aren't real police officers." After reassuring his elderly neighbor, Alex poured himself a cup of coffee and examined the citation again. The fine print mentioned something about failure to comply resulting in property liens and potential foreclosure proceedings. The threat sent a chill through him despite the warm spring evening. Outside his window, he noticed a silver sedan driving slowly past his property, the 3rd unfamiliar vehicle today. As it passed, the driver seemed to be photographing his home. That night, Alex dreamed of bulldozers approaching his property line while men in uniforms held him back. He woke at dawn, drenched in sweat and filled with determination. These people had picked the wrong family to intimidate. The Reeves had held this land through economic depressions, attempted corporate buyouts, and even a flood that had taken half the county. Some pretend police and an overzealous Homeowners Association weren't going to change that. By breakfast, Alex had a plan. It was time to find out exactly who was behind the scheme, and to teach them a lesson about messing with a property owner who knew his rights. Alex stared at the black SUV from his kitchen window, its tinted windows reflecting the afternoon sun. He'd seen the same vehicle 3 times now, always parked just far enough away to maintain plausible deniability, but close enough to monitor his comings and goings. The thumb drive Thomas Whitaker had given him felt heavy in his pocket, a digital Pandora's box he hadn't yet found the courage to open. After checking that the SUV's occupant was still in place, Alex slipped out his back door and cut through the wooded area that separated his property from Mrs. Finch's. The path was well worn from years of neighborly visits, barely visible unless you knew where to look. Mrs. Finch was waiting on her back porch, her weathered hands clutching a manila folder. Her usually neat silver hair looked disheveled, and the dark circles under her eyes suggested she'd slept as poorly as Alex had. "I found these," she said without preamble, spreading several documents across her patio table. "After you called, I remembered my Henry kept every piece of paper related to our property. Look at this." She pointed to a surveyor's map dated 1978, showing the original farmland parcels before any development. Their properties, along with 3 others, were clearly marked as excluded from what was then called the Oakwood Commercial Development Zone. "The original developer went bankrupt," Mrs. Finch explained, "but Henry always said they'd try again someday. That's why he made me promise never to sell, no matter what offers came in." Alex studied the documents, pieces falling into place. "This proves our properties were deliberately excluded from any future development. But why are they coming after us now, after all these years?" The answer came when Alex finally plugged Thomas's thumb drive into his laptop that evening. The files contained internal emails, planning documents, and architectural renderings for Oakwood Plaza, a luxury shopping center positioned exactly where their properties currently stood. Most damning was an email from Victoria Chambers to her investors dated just 3 months ago. "Acquisition of remaining parcels proceeding on schedule. Our new approach eliminates costly buyout negotiations. Target properties will be incorporated through regulatory pressure rather than purchase. Legal vulnerabilities of owners being assessed. Projected savings, $4.2 million. Alex felt sick. They weren't just being bullied by an overzealous HOA. They were targets of a calculated strategy to force them out without fair compensation. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Parking lot of Joe's Diner. 20 minutes. Come alone." The rain had started when Alex pulled into the nearly empty parking lot. Thomas Whitaker was hunched in his car, engine running, constantly checking his mirrors. He rolled down his window just enough to pass Alex a sealed envelope. "I'm leaving town tonight," Thomas said, his voice barely audible over the rain. "Victoria discovered some files missing. There's a board member you can trust, Catherine Lynn. She doesn't know what Victoria's doing, but she's suspicious. The evidence you need is in there." Before Alex could ask anything more, Thomas drove away, tires splashing through puddles. Back home, Alex emptied the envelope onto his kitchen table. Inside was a signed affidavit from Thomas detailing Victoria's scheme, along with a list of names, other homeowners being targeted, financial partners in the development, and most surprisingly, 2 county officials allegedly receiving consulting fees from Victoria's company. The black SUV was gone from its usual spot, but Alex no longer felt relieved. The game had changed, and the stakes were far higher than he had imagined.